Good afternoon. Our team sought to explore the relationship between producer transparency and sustainable consumption. Our team is both international and multi-institutional, with the participants listed below as well as the participating universities. The project's theme arose from the 12th Sustainable Development Goal, responsible consumption and production. SDG 12 is oriented toward remedying the relationship between the economy and the environment, promoting systems of production that do not destroy the environment while encouraging economic growth. The UN proposes that this will be accomplished by using less resources to do more, educating people on related issues, and supporting more sustainable and green business practices, altogether helping transition to greener economies. Next slide. Our team chose to address more closely the SDG 12 targets 7 and 8, promoting sustainable procurement practices, and promoting a universal understanding of sustainable lifestyle.
In order to explore these targets, we focused our attention on three main objectives. Firstly, we wanted to investigate environmental practices and information transparency among food producers, by each selecting a company from anywhere in the world to use as a case study in order to gain a broad understanding of how companies may or may not be engaging with the SDG 12 targets. Secondly, we aim to assess the impact of sustainability information on consumer activity, therefore gauging whether the transparency of companies would affect their food consumption choices. We also hope to highlight how consumers and businesses can play their part in achieving the sustainability development goals through making simple changes.
To investigate the environmental practices of food producing entities, we choose 8 companies from across the world. Information was acquired for accessible data sources such as the company website, new article, etc. Next slide, please. From North America, we selected Box Water. They sell water box in single-use cartons. Bimbo Bakeries, focusing on the brand Orwith. Cliff Bar and Company, they produce organic energy bars and snacks. Beyond Meat, a company that produces plant-based meat substitutes. Cargill, a top producer and distributor of agricultural products. From South America, we investigate Bacchus and Johnson's, the largest beer manufacturer in Peru. From Europe, Innocent Drink, a company founded in the UK that produces smoothies and juice. And from Asia, we selected Nissin Food, a Japanese food company that produces instant noodles. Next, please. This chart resumes the information we collected about the subject companies related to their sustainable practices. The criteria we used was information was easy to find. Do they reduce water or energy inputs? Do they have any awards or lawsuits regarding sustainability? Do they contribute to the SDGs? And do they have recyclable packages? We can see that most companies that have good environmental practices, the ones with 1 or not red boxes, give disclosure and accessible information for the public about their practices. One that stands out is Cargill, that doesn't have information easy to find, doesn't reduce water, energy, and nor contribute to the SDGs. They even have a lawsuit about misleading official information about the emission of pollutants. On the other hand, we can see that Cliff Bar and Bacchus have awards for sustainability. Cliff Bar and Company have packages for each individual product, but they are planning to make them reusable or compostable by 2030. Next, please. With the case studies, we conclude that a company with good environmental practices gives disclosure, maintains sustainability practice, and contributes to the SDGs, such as Box Water, Cliff Bar, Innocent Drink, and Bacchus. On the other hand, companies with bad environmental practices do the opposite, such as Cargill.
In addition to the case studies, we administered a Qualtrics survey with the intent of better understanding how people think about their food consumption in respect to sustainability. Ultimately, we wanted to understand how the sustainability practices previously mentioned in the case studies affect a person's willingness to purchase from that company. Considering that this survey was primarily distributed across university campuses, the demographics of the responses were skewed from the general population towards college students. Additionally, the survey was administered in both Spanish and English. Next slide, please. Looking at the geographic dimension of the survey demographics, our responses are about half from North America and South America, in red and purple respectively, and we also have a fair amount of representation from Asia. In regards to age, our survey was answered predominantly by people ages 18 to 34, with only a few responses over the age of 54. In regards to education, everyone who answered our survey reported having education at least up to a high school degree, with the majority of people having a college degree or a 4-year degree. Next slide, please. Firstly, we asked these two questions. Do you seek out sustainability-related information from food-producing companies? Which was around 50 to 50% yes or no, skewed slightly towards no at 55%. Then we asked if you were more aware of the varying environmental impact of your food consumption, would that change your consumption choices? And the answer to this was yes from 91% of survey respondents. This is interesting, as a sort of narrative that can be drawn from these two questions is, yes, I would change my behavior if I knew more about the impact of my consumption, but no, I'm not going to seek out the information that I know would persuade me to change. Information such as this survey really can and should inform the way that producer transparency, with the intent of informing consumers, is approached. Producing annual reports that consumers would have to go to a web page to read will probably be less effective than labeling right on the package of foods. Next slide, please. We also asked people who they thought was responsible for making sustainable decisions, the producer or the consumer. With the two pie charts, anything in green is some form of agreement, with the darkest being strong agreement and the lightest somewhat agreement. When writing the two survey questions, we had the idea that it would be one or the other, but this really isn't the case at all. We see that with both pie charts, the majority of them are green, showing that people agree that it's the responsibility of both parties. Thinking back to what was mentioned on the previous slide, 55% of people are not seeking out sustainability-related information. But here, we see many people are saying that it is indeed their responsibility to make informed choices. Once again, this points to the need and the possible efficacy of in-your-face or easy-to-access information on the impact of consumption choices. We also wondered how many people are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals prior to taking this survey. Then later, we could see if the Sustainable Development Goal awareness had a significant effect on other consumption patterns. For the total responses, SDG awareness was about 50-50 for yes or no. And somewhat surprisingly, there was little variance across different demographics.
From our investigation, we conclude the need for company transparency by revealing there is a consumer demand for sustainable products, but currently it is too difficult to navigate the best choices. Despite wanting to make ethical investments, consumers are unlikely to actively seek out sustainability information from the companies they are buying from, so this information needs to become more readily accessible. This could be achieved by implementing government-mandated transparency, for example, displaying environmental certification standards and ethical credentials on their packaging or website, in a similar manner to the RSPO standard for sustainable palm oil that can be found on many products. Activists and journalists should also do more to spread awareness of ways to make sustainable food choices, as well as highlighting companies with good and bad practices. Next slide, please. Consumers can play their part by making responsible choices when buying food products, such as choosing products with least packaging. They should put emphasis on actively researching the practices of companies they are buying from, such as looking into their bad practices and willingness to be sustainable, in order to make more informed choices. Lastly, they should ensure that they are aware of their carbon footprint and how the products they buy are affecting their CO2 production. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear any questions and feedback.